There is a tool that is often used when creating a document for the first time in order to constrain where you're typing information and ensuring that it really stays within the boundaries of what you wanted to include within the body text of your document. You can set up tabs. So I'm just simply going to explain to you that on the keyboard you have a key which is on the left hand side just above your caps lock. Now for older keyboards it will have the word tab, or it may just have an arrow that points towards the right side. But in our case with the newer keyboards it usually has a double arrow, two separate arrows, each one pointing in a different direction. That's your tab key. Using the tab key, and I'm just simply going to choose here health risks, so I'm just going to jump in front of this line here, and I'm just simply going to put my mouse there so it's an insertion point, and I'm going to press that tab key. Now the one thing I want you to remember, and this is really important, by default a tab is 1/2 inch. So if I click tab once, it jumps a 1/2 inch, and we can see that on the the ruler at the top here. In fact, if I put my mouse right down near the bottom of it and I click, you'll see a little line there, and that tells me that line lines up right with 1/2 inch for health risks. Okay, so we can actually press tab again, and once again it will jump again 1/2 inch, and I can press it again and it jumps 1/2 inch. So by default, tab is set to jump 1/2 inch. If I hold the shift key and then I click on tab, it will jump towards the left hand side 1/2 inch. So I'm just going to do this to reset it back to where I was. Now we could have done the undo command as well as a way of jumping back. So there are two different approaches I'm going to use here. The first one is by using this particular ruler and the little tiny icon on the left hand side just below the ribbon. You'll see a little L bracket. Now the L is usually a left tab. That's the way it begins. But if I click on it, it will change to different types of tabs. So the next one will be a center justification, the next one a right, and then of course it's going to jump to decimal place. This is a brilliant tool. We're going to use this in a minute. And also the pike command, which is to put a solid line in. We'll try that one as well. And of course the others, which you'll see here on the keyboard, on the ruler, which is to have the first line indent, the hanging indent, which is the rest of the body text of a paragraph, and then of course to move both of them at the same time. So let's just jump back here again to our left. If I were to click, now I have the insertion point on this particular line called health risks and precautions. If I click at 1 inch, you'll notice there's now a little L bracket there. So this tells me that if I press tab, it shouldn't go to 1/2 inch. It should now jump to 1 inch. And I'm just simply going to click on that. Let's go up to 4 inches. So I'll click at 4 inches, and you notice there's another little L there. So I could, if I wanted to, change this and make this a center justify. So I'm going to go back to my 4 inch. I'm just going to grab that L and pull it off the ruler so it takes it away. And since I now have center justify, I'll click on 4 inch. And now I have a center justify. So center justify, when I type into something, it will automatically type both left and right. And it will try to center whatever statement or word I'm actually typing in. Now I'm going to put one more in, and that happens to be at 6 inches, and this is an interesting one by itself. This is the right justify. Now the beauty of using this right justify is it will not jump to the next line when I get to the end of the sentence. In other words, if it had actually reached this margin, it would automatically start to type on the next line below it. But with Red Justify, it will work towards the left. So we're going to prove that. Now I'm just going to go to the end of the sentence. I'm going to press enter, and you'll notice something. Those tabs will still be there because they're still part of the same section. However, if I go down to another area and I click anywhere down here, so I'll click in front of the number, okay, you'll notice there are no tabs there, so it's only a ½ inch. So if I go back here again, this section actually has those tabs in it. So as long as I stay in that section, I'll be able to use those tabs. So I'm going to press tab. It should jump to 1 inch, which it did. And I'm going to type in my name. If I were building a telephone list, this would be absolutely ideal. And I press tab again, it will center justify at 4 inches. And I'll just put in Brampton. So Brampton campus, and you notice that it actually has centered itself right in the middle. And I'm going to press tab again, and now it's at 6 inches, so I'll type in a fictitious telephone number, and you notice it hasn't jumped to the next line. It's still on the same line. So this is actually a brilliant feature when we want to set up a section that will follow a very specific strategy. Now there is another way of doing this, so I am going to jump down a couple of lines here. Okay, so I'm going to press enter a couple of times to give myself a little bit more space. I'm going to remove these tabs. Now there are several ways of doing this. The simplest is just grab and drag it off. But now I'm going to go to the Home tab, and from this line where my insertion point is right now, it will now change that. So I'm going to go to Paragraph, use the drop down arrow, and at the very bottom of Paragraph you'll see that there is a button called Tabs. So I'm going to click on that, and I'll get a small dialog box. Now here's the beauty of this dialog box. I can even put in lines between the tabs. So I'm going to set this once again to 1 inch, and I'm going to say that this is a left justify, so I'll make sure that the little dot has been placed in there by clicking on it. And I'm going to say that I don't want any lines up to that point. So this is preceding that tab, and I'm going to set it. Now the beauty here is I can add another one. So I'm going to do that. I'm going to put in another one here at 3½ inches, so 3.5 inches. And this time I'm going to choose that I would like to put in a center justify, but I'd like to have a line up to it, and I'm going to use a dotted line. So I'm going to click on number 2. Now between 1 and 3.5 it will automatically put a line in. So I'm going to click on set. And then just for kicks I think I'll put one more in. But this one will be a little bit different. In fact, I'll put in 2. I'll say at 4½ inches I'm going to put a bar. Okay, so there's now a bar there. And you'll see this in a moment. It's like drawing a straight line vertically. I'm going to set that, and then I'm going to go to 5 inches. You notice the beauty of this? I can kind of set it up, strategize what would I like to have it look like. Now from the bar I'm going to go to 5 inches, and at 5 inches I'm going to make it a right justify. And in this case I think I'll put a line in there as well. So we'll put in a number 2. Now we could have used anything here. And I'm going to set that. And now I'm going to click OK, and we're going to look at the ruler. Because on the ruler I now have my 1 inch left, my 3½ inch center, I have my straight line, which is called a pike, and I have the right justify. So let's just do that. Let's just press tab, and you know my pike is already here, my straight line. So I'm going to press tab. I'm going to type in my name again. I'm going to press tab. It will jump to the center justify of 3½ with that little dotted line. and I'm just simply going to put in center. There we go. So this is now the center, and I'll press tab, and you notice the line goes all the way across here, goes right through that straight line. But the beauty of the straight line is every length of, let's say every line that I put in here for content, it'll put that line in, and eventually it will look like there's a straight line all the way down. So I'm just simply, because this is right justified, I'm just going to give it a number, 1, 2, 3, and then I'm going to press enter, and you'll notice it's still there. So I'm going to press tab. I'll put in, we'll put in John this time. Center, we'll put in top. Tab again, we'll put in another number, 5, 4, and then I'll press enter. You notice how that straight line is now giving you a separation. Now we could have put that anywhere here. In fact, we could have put it between every bit of information that we're installing here. Every line I put in, every time I press enter at the end of the line, it will continue to put in these tabs. So just keep that in mind going forward. Now if I wanted to turn it off for this particular line, what I could do is create a new section by going back to tabs. And now all I have to do is just clear all of these. So I can clear all of them, and it goes right back to the default of 1/2 inch. So I'll click OK, and you notice they're all gone. But if I press tab, it'll go back to the default of 1/2 inch. So there we are at 1/2 inch again. I click it again, we have another 1/2 inch. Click it again, another 1/2 inch, etc. So hopefully that helps a little bit with tabs. They are really good when you want to constrain the information to occupy very specific locations.